愚かな人間よ。ビルドロン部隊トランスフォーム。我々のデストロの力見せてやる。合体。
Ladies and gentlemen, this is internet personality Vangelus, and it's time for another Double Vision Unite Warriors comparison review. Rolling out from the HobbyLink Japan Construction Quarry, the 4th Unite Warriors box set, third one to come out at retail, is the original Combiner Devastator. And hey, check it out, the box has no magnetic flap or fancy clamshell innards. It's almost identical to the Combiner Wars Devastator box, like the same nondescript and temporary inner cardboard mush and the same basic graphic design on its outer paper skin. Though the art has been modified somewhat to go with the alterations this set received in comparison to the North American version, and all that goofball transformation step count stuff is gone. If I had busted this set open and put the review together overnight, I'd have said that the number of people calling the Unite Warriors Constructicons hues of green and purple different hues of green and purple than those of the Combiner Wars set is crazy. After some time looking at both Devastator box contents alongside one another, the greens and purples are different. Extremely, slightly different to my human eyes. Not enough to say that those hues in question should dictate your purchase decision. However, there are clearly a bunch of paint differences between the two sets. Also, the Unite Warriors version includes 6 original weapons, modeled after the individual guns of the original G1 Constructicons, and those guns have storage on each of their owners in vehicle mode. We'll see that as we go through each member one at a time, and we're going to begin with Mixmaster, the totally normal cement truck that orients its drum in the opposite direction from whatever 1980s mixer the original toy was mimicking. The major paint difference to talk about is the fact that Takara Tomy piled a ton of truck cab style detail onto the back of Mixmaster's alt mode. While one could see this as mostly being for the benefit of Devastator, it also means that, well, this truck looks like it has 2 cab sections, one on either side. So if you want to drive this guy around backwards for the sake of a G1 silhouette, he has the paint applications to support it. Other big additions include silver on all 6 of his hubcaps, and some extra green to help the top of the mixing drum blend together a little more with the receptacle below. Also, the side canisters are now purple instead of silver. Huh. By the way, the fact that Mixmaster's weapon storage uses the roof of his fake rear cab and points forward in that direction, we're totally meant to drive this guy around G1 backwards and guilt-free. Next up is Gren. Glenn? We all know him as Hook, and he's still a big plank on wheels, no matter how many different and extra paint applications he's received. Those include a full suite of silver hubcaps. Noticing a theme? The tip of his crane boom also gets a big dab of swish metallic purple, which is always welcome in my household. His weapon storage is very personally designed, using a rectangular slot on the gun to mount it along either side of his crane boom, and giving that armature a weaponized function outside of bonking stuff. Team leader Scrapper yields massive boons from his Unite Warriors rendition, and most of them are in his robot mode, but that doesn't stop his big chunky wheels from gaining a delicious set of silver painted hubcaps. Also, his Decepticon insignia has moved from his roof to his scoop. I find myself unable to feel anything about that change. I feel satisfied with his individual weapon storage, which makes use of his already existing back-end pegs to allow his rifle to open fire from vehicle mode. Scavenger claws his way out of the box and reveals that almost nothing looks different when he's an excavator. Like, almost nothing obvious has changed. A red paint detail is now silver, a black paint detail is now near black gunmetal. Such excitement! Well, let me tell you, excitement truly begins when you mount Scavenger's new gun onto a peg near the back of his excavator mode. You see how exciting he's become? Bone Crusher is almost the same story, except for one huge thing. His treads have now got purple innards, just like the San Diego Comic-Con Combiner Wars version. This doesn't mean a whole lot until we get to Devastator's combined form, but it's also the biggest vehicle mode change as far as colors go on this guy. There are some other tweaks, like a different approach to the headlights, and a differently colored block of plastic hinge just beneath them, but really it's all about those new tread side strips of purple. And Bone Crusher's new gun. It pegs in alongside his cab like a low-riding underslung firearm for whoever might be piloting this suspicious bulldozer. Finally, Long Haul's vehicle mode swaps out its purple side chunks for black side chunks. Edgy! There's also a little more headlight detail, outlining the main ones in black and dotting the smaller ones in red. Also, one last time, let's highlight some huge new silver-painted hubcaps. Swish and bling, dog! Also, the suspect strip of silver from the Combiner Wars version has been replaced with green, blending in a lot more smoothly in this mode. Long Haul's personal firearm uses a long slot to tab onto either of his not-so-hidden forearms, keeping it tight to the side of the vehicle and leaving room for all of the Devastator accessories to fill out the truck bed as they did on the Combiner Wars version. Bonus points to Unite Warriors for very clearly laying out how to do this in its instruction book. Look, this is only my second Unite Warriors review, but I am not going to fall into a pattern already. We're going to sit through the entire transformation clip this time. I already feel guilty. Anyway, as is the Unite Warriors way, the Constructicon robot modes will probably be the biggest show of how cartoon-oriented the line's color choices are compared to the Combiner Wars toy-themed layouts. And Mixmaster shows it in his kind of depressing removal of the large silver midriff paint application seen on the Combiner Wars version. These Unite Warriors guys do a whole lot of toy-toon pastichery, as Mixmaster removes the silver but adds the toyetic blue strips that were missing on the Combiner Wars version. So strange, man. A real neither-nor situation. Unite Warriors Mixmaster is in general more boring to look at, but gains an engineering addition in the form of his elbows. Rather than the awkward arm-breaking single hinge seen domestically, Japanese Mixie has a second hinged plate in between the bicep and the forearm, to allow for a smoother looking bent arm and a double-jointed elbow if you still want to use the original hinge. An upgrade I didn't really want, but am happy to have. Glenn thankfully doubles down on toy coloration for his chest, deciding not to go for a wall of purple and instead adding to the Combiner Wars version's number of paint applications for the most part. The legs swing back to the cartoon though, using two big swacks of silver to change his image from a silver-legged man in green knee-high boots to a silver-legged man with little green shoes and some big exoskeletal shin chunkage. Speaking as a friend of silver paint, this generally leaves me pleased. With his elbows being similar to Mixmaster's, Gren also receives the same engineering enhancement of a third conjoining plank to provide a more natural-looking arm curve and a double-jointed elbow if you decide to go for the full bend. I have spoken before about how much I like a good scrapper, and how much Combiner Wars Scrapper generally looks like a good scrapper when standing around and glaring at things. Unite Warriors Scrapper also looks good while doing so, but even though it's more accurate, I'm not feeling the darker metallics used on his face. The Hasbro Silver pings me a little bit harder. And the Japanese version also ditches some silver midriff paint for the sake of more purple. My poor hurting heart. He does look very sharp nonetheless, with just as varied and lively a canvas for a torso as the domestic version. Just less silver, too. However, Unite Warriors Scrapper pulls far ahead regardless of my silver paint proclivities as he improves on the non-existent elbows we saw in the Hasbro version. Now, there are elbows, and still a bicep swivel too. It may be a simple hinge, but it adds so very much even with the slightest tweak, and for the sake of being a heel, it locks really hard into place in vehicle mode. So hard, in fact, that I'd advise a lot of caution in unlocking it. Mine's been fine, but if you grab and pull, I know I've heard stories of people snapping at least some part of the assembly. By virtue of all this, Unite Warriors Scrapper has entirely unique tooling from the elbow down, with even the forearm and fist pieces looking different in a number of fairly unimportant ways. Scavenger was one of the two most fully featured standalone robots in the Combiner Wars Devastator set, so what possible things could the Unite Warriors version add to his repertoire? Well, Traveler, perhaps you'd like some nigh identical color layouts, because Scavenger has the barest of tweaks to his paint apps. He ditches symmetrical reds on his upper torso to have one red, one silver. He loses his little yellow stripes and adds black squares. Such excitement. Well, what if I told you that he got retooled joints as well? Insane, right? Perhaps a little unnecessary? Whatever you think, his ball socket knees have been replaced with a new assembly featuring a dedicated thigh swivel and dedicated knee hinge, rather than the ball joint that still kind of accomplished both. It certainly looks a little nicer and more mechanical, but it's hardly a game changer. The big plus on Unite Warrior's Scavenger is a very unexpected little thing. The Combiner Wars version's shovel just folds up against his back, no big deal. The Unite Warrior's shovel actually friction clips in there thanks to some micrometer tweaked geometry that took me an embarrassingly long time to identify. It's a pleasant dose of powered up solidity. Going into my MVP Rockstar Bone Crusher, he actually loses a bit of his green onesie effect, as there are now purple strips down the sides of his legs. Damn it! It's not the end of the world, it's just not very attractive. He does, however, get even more green onesie above the waist, losing all of the toy referential silver from his arms and mono boob, in order to be even more green like in the cartoon. This was my least favorite Unite Warriors paint change in photos, but having the figure in hand, it's a shame, but it's not crippling to his visual motif the way I thought it would be. And hey, Bone Crusher also gets some new swivel hinge assemblies in his knees to replace the Combiner Wars version's ball socket joints, just like on Scavenger. That's not much of a change, but on my two personal Bone Crushers, that crotch assembly, it's 200% more solid on the Unite Warriors version. It can still come apart, but nowhere near as readily as the Combiner Wars version, with all the tabs and clips lined up on both. I don't know if that'll be the case for all of them, but it pushes Unite Warrior's Bone Crusher way up there for me, regardless of his lack of silver paint. Where Combiner Wars Long Haul gave up on referencing the cartoon model much outside of the head, the Unite Warriors version tries valiantly to pull from that source's color layout as well. This means that the purple gloves are now black to try and merge with the shoulder tires into a facsimile of the cartoon Long Haul's solid black arms. Also, the big silver hips are now big green hips, with teeny bits of silver inside that might be trying to look like tiny sub-thighs. Whatever the case, he's now a huge dude in a sleeveless green onesie for the most part. As with Bone Crusher, I thought this looked awful in photos, but in person, the big guy wears the color scheme pretty nicely. Of course, it helps that he's gotten some major retooling in his arms, changing the useless sideways elbow flap into a multi-component assembly that includes a proper forward hinge and a dedicated bicep swivel. This does wonders for Long Haul, even more so than the new elbows did for Scrapper. The Unite Warriors Constructicons all get an extra G1 toy-oriented firearm to go with their weaponized Devastator bits. The bevy of firepower is a nice touch, if a little unnecessary. As for changes, the only major one is that the missile spam packs have gained red paint apps to give all of their 3x3 warheads a little more visual punch. Crimson Kaboom! The Devastator combination is just as satisfying to go through on the Unite Warriors rendition. Nothing's really new here, but having built up and broken down the big guy multiple times across 2 releases, I'm amazed how much fun it continues to be as an activity. By the way, it was pointed out to me that Long Haul's feet are in fact meant to lock Long Haul's knees when they're Devastator's thighs. There's a slit that's supposed to have the foot panels jam into the smaller knee ratchets, and they do. They also dislodge as soon as anything jostles them. Both the Combiner Wars and Unite Warriors versions suffer from this. Alas. Anyway, the original Destron Gattai Senshi takes on a number of subtle changes to make himself a little more animation-oriented. And those changes don't necessarily include the silver strips that are now livening up his forearms, but they do include the purple hands. There are also twin strips of purple to help symmetrize the treads that mark his shoulders. And there's a big patch of green paint on his midriff, and big patches of purple paint on his skirt-covered thighs. Those skirts now have purple vents instead of black, too. That extra silver grill detailing on his fake Mixmaster cab foot serves to make him less animation accurate on that spot than the Combiner Wars version, turns out, supporting the notion that it's there more so to encourage backwards cement trucking. And much like Scrapper, there's a darker gunmetal color added to Devastator's face. I still prefer the look of a lighter silver up there. However, Unite Warriors Devastator has a unique aspect to his head. Thanks to a forehead flap and some flippable shades, you can have him look like the retail or San Diego Comic-Con Devastators from Combiner Wars, giving you the full facial tooling gamut in one happy contained cranium. These are references to the 2 very different faces Devastator had in the G1 cartoon, sometimes alternating from shot to shot in the same episode. Unite Warriors Devastator also adds some ratchet power to his shoulder joints, which is extremely welcome after the wonky friction joints found in the Combiner Wars version. There's also some more pronounced detenting to the Scavenger elbow, making the right arm the arm for holding Devastator's big-ass rifle. As for all those new individual firearms, they assemble together into a pair of nondescript clumps that can be stuck onto the long-haul truck bed that's on Devastator's back. I feel weird about there being two clumps of gun rather than one big one, and can't help finding the whole approach to be slapdash at best. Unite Warriors Devastator comes with the requisite color changes that the subline has established, but that is hardly the draw of purchasing this version. There are piles and piles of new toolings, and almost all of them focus on the individual Constructicons. Devastator gains a cute visor gimmick and some ratcheted shoulders, two things that anyone with a Combiner Wars Devastator may find other options for in the world of unofficial add-ons. The Combine mode was the centerpiece of the domestic version, and the Unite Warriors set spends a solid plus $80 to $100 on its MSRP to make the Constructicons themselves into an experience that's on par. And it's money well spent, adding all kinds of things that elevate every member of the team and turn Scrapper into one of my favorite 2015 Transformers of 2016. It's not a clear-cut case for any given potential buyer, though. If you think that your gift set will spend most of its life as Devastator, the Unite Warriors version comes with a price premium that focuses entirely on something you may well experience for all of an hour or so. You have to be interested in the individual Constructicons for this to be worth the pickup. In fact, if you're looking to get one of those upgrade kits that change the shoulder layout, you're losing the biggest gain Unite Warriors offers for the Combine mode. But this all assumes that everything costs its MSRP and you live in North America. Both Devastators have gone on sale numerous times since coming out, and for non-North American collectors, it has at times been the case where it simply is cheaper to get the Unite Warriors version. And if you're in that situation, then friggin' do it! There's no gain to choosing the Combiner Wars set other than saving money and maybe adding back some silver paint. The Unite Warriors version is categorically superior in terms of its raw tooling, and it is the iteration of this whole experiment that trends closest to hanging with a masterpiece display. Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus, and oh my god, I kinda hope there's eventually a G2 Devastator redeco, but also think I dread making a third video for this colossal assembly of jointed plastic. Life is so hard, isn't it?